What's up, everybody? Happy Friday. Welcome to another episode of Tech Backstage. We just had a little bit of technical difficulties, so we're going to record this and then stream it live afterwards. But my guest today, Corey Kossack from Aspireship. Corey, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Eddie?
I'm good, man. I'm excited for the weekend, Labor Day weekend. Gonna go take a small trip and hang out with the wife. So really excited about that. Excited to have you on the show today. This is a topic that is near and dear to my heart, and I think the work that you guys are doing right now, super cool and 100% relevant, not just to the tech industry, but anybody wanting to get into the tech industry. Especially into the SaaS side of the tech industry. So excited to jump into the topic. But before we do, let's talk a little bit about you. How'd you get to Aspireship? What's the origin story?
Yeah, thanks so much. Well, the quick version of the story is I've been an entrepreneur for most of my life, either starting companies or joining early stage companies. Lived through a whole lot of interesting things, including what not to do in my 20s for sure. And then I founded another company called Frederick. I guess this was back in 2015 as for small businesses, automated marketing software. And we ended up getting acquired really, really early, just by chance, and ended up on this journey where I joined a larger startup, which was then acquired by a public company, which was then taken private by a big private equity firm, all in this like condensed span of 4 years. And during this time, I had all of these people, most of them were in sales or customer support or marketing, like mostly non-technical stuff, coming by my office asking for 5 minutes to talk about their career. And almost unequivocally, it was the same version of the story, which is, hey, I'm 2 years, 5 years, 10 years into my career, but I feel completely stuck. I want to pivot to this or that. I want to specialize in something. I want to move up, whatever it may be. And I'm essentially typecast based on the job that I'm currently doing or that I've done recently. And the more and more I looked at that, the more I saw, wow, if there's this much pain inside a growing, well-respected technology company in a secondary market like Scottsdale, Arizona, which is where I currently am and where I was at the time, imagine how much pain there is at Farmers Insurance or really boring, old school, just regular type of jobs, no disrespect to Farmers Insurance. For people that wanted to get into something more current, get into the technology industry. Right. And so I saw that this is a pervasive thing. It affects most jobs, most career paths. And at the same time, being an acquired founder inside a large, software company, every time we would struggle to meet our goals, even if the company was doing really well, it would come back to things around talent. We're not hiring fast enough, ramping them up fast enough. Our attrition is terrible, and so on and so forth. And so long story short, I developed essentially a point of view that says that the reason companies have such a hard time with hiring and retaining the right people is that they're hiring for the wrong reasons. They're hiring for what your past job was, not what you're capable of actually doing.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I think that's, hugely relevant. A lot of times, especially with startups, they're all, this is at least my opinion. And, this is probably a good segue into the topic, right? Because we're talking about skills first hiring today. And we're talking about what it means for job seekers and the employers. But one of the things that I've noticed that I guess the best way I can put this is everybody in recruiting and in talent acquisition and in people in HR is they're always looking for a resume that basically has, I don't know if it's like a sign or like just a signal that basically says this person is going to be successful in this role. And the traditional way of doing that is looking for somebody who, very old school ways of, what is an indicator of success? Well, somebody that's done this job successfully before, right? If you're a car salesman, and you're looking for another car sales gig, like somebody who's sold cars before is probably going to be successful in that role versus me. I don't know how to sell cars. I barely know how to buy cars. So, but that's the way of the world, or at least that's the way it used to be. And that's just not, A, that's not how things happen anymore. And B, as fast as the world's changing right now, people are out of necessity, they have to translate to a new industry, right? Because a lot of the industries are becoming obsolete, jobs are becoming obsolete, and people are trying to get into tech. They're trying to get into SaaS companies. And my personal experience, I don't know, I'd love to hear your opinion on this, but for me, coming from an unconventional background, not having a CS degree, um, it was kind of like a secret society before I could actually get in. I don't know. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people talk about this with tech in general, and it's still true. But I actually would say that when we were talking about the old way of like looking at the resume and all of that stuff and finding the lookalike of I want the car salesman, so I'm going to see who sold cars, that still happens today. And I don't mean like every now and again it happens today. It's still the normal standard way that recruiting takes place.
Right.
And so all this other stuff, looking beyond it, those are the exceptions, not the rules. But yes, on top of that, you not only have that on a functional level of, okay, sales rep looking for sales rep, it's industry too. And so that's right. Partially where the tech part of it comes in. You're looking for incredibly specific stuff. And I'll take it a step further because seriously, this is the craziness that is out there. You could go into, say, a SaaS company looking for a sales role, and you'll still get thrown out even if you have sales experience in a SaaS company because you don't have it with their target persona or on that kind of deal size or sales cycle or whatever it may be. And so, I always say this on this topic because sometimes, whenever people agree with me on this, it can lend itself to getting into this like recruiter bashing or company bashing. These people aren't stupid. It's right. Not that they just don't know what they're doing. It's that hiring is really difficult.
Right.
And so we're all looking for some kind of comfort to tell ourselves, hey, I'm making a good decision here. So what facts do I have to go on? And so they default to the past jobs. It's just the way it's always been, and it makes rational sense. It just doesn't happen to work that well.
Yeah, no, and I agree. And I think that past experience is an indicator of success, but it's not the only indicator. And the other thing is especially in the SaaS and tech industry, a lot of the things that we're building, they're from scratch. They're to be disruptive in their industry, right? And so a lot of what you need there is, and we're gonna kind of dive into this in a little bit more detail, but it's not necessarily. I mean, it's some of it's hard skills, like we were talking about backstage. Is like and you got to have some sort of knowledge, or you can't just be a software engineer without knowing how to code. But that's my favorite thing as a software engineer is looking at these job posts that are like, hey, I need 10 years of experience in this relevant technology, and you're like, but that got released 6 months ago. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's not. And I think that's like one of the biggest recruiting jokes on LinkedIn right now. But
yeah, for sure.
That's never indicators of success. The indicators of success are people who are actually able to come in, learn quickly, adapt, because that's what the SaaS industry is. It's always about adapting, right? So one thing I'd love to ask you a little bit about Aspireship. How do you guys handle taking people from, and let's talk about outside the tech industry, because I think for anybody listening in, and we have a lot of people that are looking for jobs in tech, for people that are interested in getting into tech but aren't already in tech, how does Aspireship help with that? Like, what are the things that your team works on with your users to help get them from, say like a agricultural background, or just something that's so far away from tech into, because I know that that's a very relevant thing too. A lot of people transitioning over from maybe even like the energy sector and stuff. But like, how do you guys handle that?
Yeah, for sure. So I'll start by talking a little bit about like the why, or like how did we even think about what needed to happen. So the first thing is there's always people with capability and you can just pair them up with a job, right? But there are, in most cases, at least for what we're looking at, people don't understand what the job is, right? So this was actually me in college. I started my first company, and then when I decided at a certain point I wasn't going to keep going with this, and I, thought about getting jobs, I was thinking, I don't even know what these jobs are. Like, I just started looking at random like tech company jobs, business development, whatever. And I had thoughts in my mind reading a job description, but like, I didn't know. And that's the reality, is that people don't know. So number one was, we figured, hey, we need to make sure that the people that are going for these jobs understand what the specific jobs are and that it's for them. And people are surprised when they go into interviews that that's half of what the interviewer is looking for, is, do you actually want this job, or do you just think you want this job?
Right.
And that's crazy, right? But that's legit, like just the way it works. So number one, we designed a learning experience. It's actually similar to this style, this podcast style, where I'm the host and I interview people who are, so if we're talking about sales in the software industry, which is the first major program that we released, we're talking to sales trainers, leaders that lead sales teams at tech companies, sales reps at tech companies. And we're talking about, what is it like to actually do this? What is it like to be in a company like this? What's going on around you, and so on? How do you be successful in this specific role? And what attributes do you need to possess to really excel at this and progress in your career? And we do that. And then we also do things like audio and video role plays. So essentially a job simulation. So we're trying to give them a taste for, you're going to do this thing. How uncomfortable is this for you? Right. And that's all part of the learning experience, is seeing that, absorbing it, practicing it, seeing how somebody who's in the role would handle it. And then you have to go and take an assessment that's not a walk in the park, where you have to show this, not just multiple choice, but you have to actually do some stuff there on a role play basis and show that you've learned what to do and you can apply it. And so the big thing here is, yeah, we're assessing out, is this for you? Have you proven to yourself that you can do this and that you want to do this? And then essentially you prove to us that you're capable of doing it, which in turn proves to employers that you're capable of doing it. And so that's kind of the broad strokes on how we set up all the things that we do. Awesome.
That's great. And just out of curiosity, so I'm looking at your website right now, and I love the word reskilling. I think that's genius. But talk to me a little bit about how you guys, like, you talked a little bit about the process with your actual users, but are there any like indicators or specifics that your team can look at to say, again, a lot of what we're talking about right now is skills-based hiring, right? So somebody who has some hard skills, I think you touched on it just a second ago, is like when you're talking about sales, right, for example, and you're getting into SaaS-based sales, that stuff's hard. And so a lot of SaaS companies are looking for people that have previous experience. Does Aspireship have any sort of, data or indicators on, like, what are some of the soft skills that you're looking for in successful people and in people that have reskilled and made this jump over to tech?
Yeah, for sure. So currently we do sales and we also do customer success, which, for those that aren't familiar, it's not customer support, but it's like actually guiding customers through to their ideal outcomes over time as a software customer. And in both of these cases, the big things are you resilient? Are you coachable? Are you personable? Like, these are some of the soft skills, right? And of course we need, writing skills, communication skills, this kind of stuff. Are you a quick learner? And which goes back to the coachable thing. And so those are the things we're looking for. I think the way that this sort of problem has been approached in the past, you think about like DISC assessments and like these kind of old school things, they try and assess like, do you have this, based on answering some questions. We assess it by, hey, we're actually going to put a big gate in front of this for you. You got to go through this, do this work. It's like 20 hours of dedicated work on your own that you have to do. You can't skip through it. You literally got to do the work. So number one, are you willing to do that stuff? Are you humble enough to say, even for people that might have sales experience, or they might, have even experience in the industry, you humble enough to say, hey, I don't know everything. I might have something else to learn here, and then follow through and do that. And then prove that you're coachable. You actually learned stuff and then you're able to apply it. So I think that's the big thing that's different, is that we don't just talk about it in theory, we actually put it to the test. And then that has led to things like, in a survey we did, 87% of graduates are outperforming their peers in the same role. And that, largely is going to include people that with more experience than they have in this specific thing.
Why do you think that is? I mean, do you think it's just because they have, I have to assume it's probably because they just have that burning desire to succeed. Whereas, I was actually, I'm a big F1 fan, and Toto, who's the CEO and team principal for Mercedes, was talking about how it's really hard for championship sports teams to win 8 consecutive championships because they get compliant and you're complacent in, they kind of like just get comfortable in their role. And it's not necessarily that they're underperforming. It's just that they lose that drive to excel, not to succeed, but to really go above and beyond. Right. You think that plays a part in that?
I do. I mean, I would say it's like that resilience, that drive, paired with the humility and ability to be coachable and keep learning. So if you think about, your own story, right, which you were telling me briefly beforehand, how, you started in tech support, decided you wanted to be a software engineer, nobody was paying attention to you, somehow you muscled your way through there to like actually get a role. And then still you're kind of overlooked and, overshadowed and all of that. And you're like, screw it, I'm just going to go start a company, right? And you started a company and you built this great company. You couldn't do any of those things, number one, if you weren't driven, but number two, if you didn't have a hunger to keep learning and absorb the material, and then, believe that, like, if you believed, okay, I know enough, like I've taught myself some basics of, learning how to code and whatever, it would never get you where you need to go. So those things combined really make for a big superpower in career development.
Yeah, I think that's such a cool point too, because, even now, I own my own company, and it's been just this like rocket ship that I've been on for the last 5 years. But even now, I take courses. I like as any free time that I have. Sometimes my wife will, she likes to go out with her friends, and she's like, oh yeah, I'm going out with the girls on Thursday night. I'm like, cool. And so she'll leave, and I'll spend 6 hours in my office just learning something new. And she'll come home and be like, hey, what did you do today? I was like, what'd you do while I was out with the girls? I'm like, oh, I just sat here and learned new database technology. But that's just what drives me, right? I just like to know what's going on. And I think that's a trait that I think we always look for as well, as people that are driven to learn. They're driven to, it's the type of people that want to show up to work on a daily basis because they want to succeed at something. They want to contribute. They want to, push the ball down the field, push the envelope forward. And they don't ever want to be complacent in where they're at in their life and their career. And I think that's something that we've seen a lot of nowadays, especially in tech, because and again, circling back to talking about software engineering, sorry, that's just kind of where my head goes. But, it used to be like you needed a CS degree. But the thing is like, at least in my opinion, the CS degree is the theory. It's not necessarily an indicator of a great developer. the indicator of a great developer is a problem solver. It's somebody who is going to not only go look for the solution, but also like look for the problems and anticipate the problems and then can see them coming and really be able to kind of like look ahead. And that's, what I mean. So it's a completely different mindset, I think. And it's different than the old way of thinking, right?
Yeah, and I'll expand upon that point, because when we were looking at putting this together, one of the big areas of skepticism that I received from other people is that you could do this in an on-demand capacity. So most online learning programs or boot camps or whatever, there is live instruction, right? You get on, and even if it's remote, it's on Zoom, and there's cohorts and whatever, and people are pulling you through to the end.
Right.
I mean, that's kind of how like college is too, a little bit,
Yeah.
right?
Totally.
So like same kind of thing. Like, yes, you got to show up. Yes, you got to do work, but it's like, we're going to get you to the end and you're going to get out of here. That's what we need to do. We got to show our success rates, right? And so we took the opposite approach by saying, hey, sink or swim. Like, you say you want it, here's the open door, walk through it, knowing full well that most people would not come, they wouldn't even finish the work. And when we started it, it was completely free. We now have some like very modest, cheap fees and stuff for people who, are serious about it. But generally speaking, we had thousands upon thousands of people come through that just wouldn't do it. Mm-hmm. And when you think about the software engineering stuff, it's the same thing with saying like, oh, well, I attended a boot camp, therefore I'm qualified and I'm ready to go in and be a software engineer. No, Mike, not usually, because you need to take that and then just go a little bit further. Yeah. And it takes those same things, that drive, learning, applying it, to separate yourself from everybody down here that's just done that base level, and 99% won't go to that next level. And that's what's required to do well.
And look, I'm not trying to knock any other format, right? Because, for me, the world's never black and white, right? There's infinite shades of gray in between. For some people, the college path works really well. For other people, the boot camp path works really well. And arguably, good people come out of all of those different tracks, right?
Correct.
Personally, I prefer the self-serve model. Like you said, the people that are going to go through the self-serve model are the people that, and actually get to the end, not actually start it, but the people that are going to get to the end are the ones that are, in my opinion, because I'm this type of person, they're the ones that are motivated the most to make the change, right? We don't need somebody, dragging us along or, feeding us the content. We're out there actively looking for it. So I prefer that model for sure. So we got about 7 minutes left. A lot of times what we do in this part of the show is I like to talk about like future tech and where Aspireship's going and things like that. But in this case, I'd also like to sit down for a second and talk about, I guess we're already sitting. But I'd actually like to talk a little bit about, for anybody that's listening in, thinking about making the switch to the tech industry. First thing, do it. Like get on your journey and start today. But what feedback and what coaching do you have for these people? Like how can they take where they're at today, start the journey today, and actually get the results that they're looking for? What's the coaching that you have for them?
Yeah, I mean, to me, the biggest thing is clarity. And it sounds so simple, but just being really clear about what you want and why you want it and what you're willing to do to get it. I've had to think about this, as many entrepreneurs have, and I'm sure you have, in starting companies, right? It's like, what is this all for? What kind of pain or struggle am I willing to go through to, get to this outcome? And that's really important, not because you're necessarily going to go through all this pain. You might, but like you may not, but just knowing, hey, I am super clear on what I want and what I'm willing to do. What we have seen as being one of the key differentiators between people who make the transition seamlessly and end up going on to have a great career and those who don't, is there are people that have a very difficult time for very valid reasons in giving up something. Like, hey, I make XYZ in my base today.
Right.
This is a little bit lower. I presume that the tech industry is great and it pays well and all this stuff. Therefore, my assumption is I should be worth XYZ, whatever that is. And it's not just about pay,
Right.
title, work environment. I'm not as into the company, whatever it may be. It's like, you got to come pull it back and go, all right, what is this for? Because this is one job. This is one step in a much longer journey. And if you do that and you're like, okay, yeah, I'm willing to do all these certain things because I know I really want it, you'll be able to do it. If you go through that exercise and you say, I'm not willing to do that, I'm only willing to do this, it might still be fine, but it might also tell you, do you really need to change?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, because if you don't really want to do it, and it's not worth anything to you, any level of sacrifice or any of that, then just don't do it. Like, change is hard.
Yeah.
And it's going to be bumpy. So, just that's my number one piece of advice.
Yeah, I agree with you on that too. And I think it's super important to understand. I'm a huge fan of buddy of mine. His name's Doug. He's a big proponent of the working backwards methodology that they use at Amazon. And I'm like, we've talked about this, me and him, for probably, a year and a half now. And he got me into the book. And but it's about having the end in mind, and what are you trying to accomplish? And once you have that clear, you can actually work your way backwards and figure out what are the steps necessary to get there. I mean, obviously you might not be 100% clear on all of them, but once you have where you're going, it's a lot easier to understand what you need to do to get there, right?
It's way easier. And
yeah.
Also, you'll be tested along the way. And you'll have to remember, okay, why did I do this?
Right.
And your thoughts may change.
Yep.
Especially with struggle, tend to change and maybe pull back a little bit and say, it actually isn't as important as I thought it was, or whatever. And so you don't want to start here with, yeah, it's actually not that important, but I'm just going to do it because somebody told me it was cool, or I should, or whatever.
Yeah. Last couple minutes here. And I don't know if you have any hard data on this, but I'm interested because for me, this was a multi-year journey. Is there any sort of evidence out there that supports kind of an average time to transition, or is it just kind of on a case-by-case basis?
So overall, not related to Aspireship, it's typically quite long. I don't know how long, but I would venture to guess that for most, it's like a year, maybe a little bit less than that. For us, we have kind of approached it in an accelerated fashion. So our averages are more in line with like 90 days.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, super fast. And it doesn't take people, the actual work they do doesn't take them 90 days. Usually it's 30 days or less for them to do what they need to do to be ready. But then there's the, securing interviews and interviewing and choosing the right job and all of that stuff. So I think that it's condensing quite a bit. I will say that it has been a wacky job market for pretty much the entire existence of Aspireship. We launched just a few months before COVID. So it was like, hey, this is working. Oh, no one's hiring. And then it was like, everybody's hiring in 2021. It's like, oh, the stock market's tanking. No one's hiring. And so, the averages, the data, look, it's a pretty crazy time. But I think it's safe to say that we've seen enough to see that there are much more efficient ways to do this than everything in its totality that's been created before.
Yeah.
So if we all keep working towards making this more efficient for everyone, we can be a lot better off.
Awesome. Corey, we are out of time, but first and foremost, thanks so much for being on the show today. I think what you guys are doing at Aspireship right now, I think it's really cool. I also think it's like absolutely necessary that we have these types of programs and these types of products supporting people as they transition. So thank you for that. I do just really quick. If anybody listening in today is interested in transitioning into technology and specifically into SaaS, into a sales role or into a customer success role, visit the Aspireship website. It's right down there. I think you can thank us later. But anyways, Corey, thanks so much for being with us today. Stay with us as we go off the air. Y'all, we have a short week next week, and Carlos, our producer, we had some live streaming internet issues, so he's not with us to announce the shows. But I know we have at least one show next week, so stick with us next week as we come back. I hope everybody has a good long Labor Day weekend for those of you in the U.S., and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks, y'all. Bye.
Thanks, Eddie.